Excuse me. I need to be in a room by myself. I can't be in a room with anyone right now. When you're in a room with someone that just had a family member die, you don't know what is on their mind. You don't know what they want to do. You don't know if that's the last person they have in their family. You don't know how they're going to react. When Trayvon Martin was killed in Florida, there was an inmate who had a white inmate in his room. He was black, the other kid was white. This guy was, in there for killing somebody. The white kid was in there for, I don't know, like Grand Theft Auto or something, a burglary. Nothing major. He only had a couple of years. That white kid begged the COs to get taken out of the room. The COs denied it. They basically told him to F off, deal with it. A lot of these COs, if you try to go protective custody, they won't even let you. They'll look at you and be like, ain't nothing wrong with you. You're not bleeding. You're not scared for your life. That guy beat that kid to death. He beat him. He knocked him out and was jumping off the top bunk onto his head until his head crushed in. Confinement is dead serious. It's nothing to be taken lightly. That kid died in a confinement cell. His face was crushed. His skull crushed in. All because the COs didn't want to do their job. So the COs took it serious when he showed them the pictures of his dead son. And they took him out of the room and, he cuffed up and he told me before he left, he's like, I respect you, bro. I respect everything you said. And I told him vice versa. Same thing. You know what I mean? Just because someone partakes in things that I don't partake in, doesn't mean you won't show respect to that person. I don't need to disrespect you just because our lifestyles are different. What we do is different. You know what I mean? That's something I learned inside of prison. The next cellmate I got was the first racist person, truly racist, I ever met. And he was black. He got put into my room. We were about the same height, but this guy he was built like a UFC fighter. Huge. And he was from Broward County. The very first thing he said to me is, I'm racist. I don't like white people, but I'm going to respect you as a man. I didn't know what to say back to that. I was like, what? Excuse me? I didn't know what to say. I was just, never heard anyone just openly say something like that. He had already been down 10 years. And this whole time period of being in the cell with this guy was a whole learning experience in itself. I had to learn how to deal with a racist. So at first we didn't talk. We didn't communicate. Guys that have been down a lot, they come in, they clean the whole cell and everything. Just that's something that institutionalized people do. I mean, generally you want to clean your cell, but they just do it anyways, even if it's already clean, just to make sure. We never really communicated. It was to the point that if my bunk was the bottom bunk, so I sit on my bunk when I eat, he sits on the toilet. So when they pass food through the flap, generally you would take the first tray and pass it to the guy next to you. I tried to pass it to me. He told me, I don't want to eat nothing you touched. So I'm like, oh, he's a real racist. He said, it ain't no disrespect, but I'll grab my own shit. He was like, it ain't no disrespect, but I'll grab my own stuff. And I was just like, all right, if that's how you're rocking, that's how you're rocking. You know what I mean? It was a very uncomfortable vibe in the room. We didn't get along. We didn't speak. We just weren't. It was very awkward, and it felt like something could pop off at any moment. Now, we got mail one night. What ended up happening is he was on the top bunk reading his mail, and I was on the bottom bunk reading mine. And I think, my mom was telling me how my little brother got my drawing that I sent him and put it up on the wall in his room. And all of a sudden, my cellmate jumps off the bunk and starts screaming. He's screaming, no. He's slamming the cell door, hitting it with his whole arm, just slamming it. He dropped down to the floor, just dropped down and was hitting the concrete floor, screaming, no, 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 my baby. The first thing I assumed was his kid died. You know what I mean? But I didn't know if he had kids. We didn't speak. I didn't know him. And I'm just thinking to myself, how is this going to turn out? Is he going to take this aggression and turn it towards me? And he's crying and screaming. And eventually he got quiet. And he sat on the toilet. And he just started talking. He opened up and he got right into the story. And he said, the woman that I loved on the street, I missed my opportunity to be with her, and I chose to be in the streets instead. I loved her, and she loved me, but my main focus wasn't on being in love at that age. So what he did is, he was doing whatever he did to land himself in prison, and you know what I mean? He's been down 10 years. So he has a release date. Like, I don't know if he got out already, if he's still in there and he's about to get out, but he had a release date. Basically what happened is the woman that he loved, I guess at some point in time, she got AIDS. And she gave it to another guy. What happened is the guy went to her house, broke inside of the house, shot her, and then shot himself. They both died. The 12-year-old daughter is the one that, discovered the bodies. And the 7-year-old son was there too. And they both saw their mother laying there, bleeding out, shot in the head. And he told me how the son was, she would tell him, because I think the son was only 7, so he never met the son. He was already doing so much time. But he told me how she would tell him the son was very sensitive and wasn't very outspoken. He was very quiet. And, it made him cry even more, thinking about the damage it's going to do, looking at his mother dead in front of him. From that point on, we started talking a little bit more, bits and pieces. And we used to get into race and history conversations. And, he told me, he said, everyone's racist. You can't prove to me that everybody isn't racist. And he asked me a question. He said, if you were in a fire and there was a white baby and a black baby, which one would you save? If you could only save one, which one would you save? So I said, which one would you save? And he said, I would save my own to preserve my race. But my comment back to him was, my race is already preserved through me. If I have a child, that child will have white blood. But if I let that other child die, the race would be non-existent. You know what I mean? It was a tough question. It's a tough topic to think of, something as serious as that. But he was just so, that was just his whole upbringing, was the white police and racism. But what I respected the most about him was how upfront he was. There were white racists that had swastikas and this and that, but nobody would say the N-word in front of anyone else. Nobody would tell you they're openly racist. A lot of people would just say, I'm proud to be white or this and that. But me being white, if I was around a whole bunch of white guys, then I would hear something racist. But if there was any other race around, they wouldn't say anything, and that seemed very fake to me. That's something I respected about this man, is the first thing he told me was his beliefs, but he'll respect me anyway as a man. He respected the fact that I knew a lot of history on a lot of different things. The organization that I'm in, the roots and how everything came about. He respected the fact that I wasn't just some stupid kid claiming to be something and knew nothing about it. It's probably the only, points that I got with him was the fact that I knew history. I've always liked history. And I never picked one thing to learn about. You know what I mean? I was learning about the Moors in Africa. I was learning about the Panthers. I was trying to learn about things that weren't really taught in school, because a lot of those things weren't taught in school. I learned about religion. You know, I learned a lot of things about Christianity that made me believe in a lot of different things and look at things in a lot of different ways, especially when it comes to race.